We'll turn now to the other part of the literature paper, which is one of the novels. So here we're going to be looking at Of Mice and Men. Obviously, there were a lot of comments about Please Do, Mice of Men, and obviously what the perambulations of do meant, I wasn't really quite sure of. So what I've gone and done here is basically listed about 18 essay plans of things you could be asked and things you might want to write about. So if you find a quote to back up every single one of these points, I can almost guarantee you can answer any question that would come up. And obviously, even if you just remember what the actual points are, then maybe in the exam you can pick out the points then, because a lot of them are quite obvious. So here we go. So the first thing we're going to look at analysing is the way it's written. So first things first, it's got a lot of dialogue all the way through, which lets us know a lot more about the characters, and we hear a lot more of their voices, so we kind of really get distinct flavours for each one of them, and we see distinct mentality in all of it. It also allows us to be in touch with the reality of the actual time, because obviously they speak with dialect, etc., and this is one of the things that Steinbeck wanted us to be well aware of. So we actually felt that these were real characters, and obviously that's something that goes across a lot of his work as well. And also it puts us there, which actually we'll come to in a little bit, because it's a very cinematic feel to this, and obviously being with the spending a lot of time with the dialogue and with the characters themselves, being kind of on their lips or at the edge of their lips, it really kind of puts us up close with them. And this is obviously an intimate study of a bunch of failed people, and so that's why we want to be that close. So we've also got a cyclical opening in the way it's written, so we come back to this at the end. Nothing, and which that proves is nothing's actually changed, so people's lives are as were, and basically we end up at the foot of the mountains, the mountains that have just seen hundreds of people probably come through and suffer the same fate. And that's really just a comment on the theme of the book about the American dream, its fallacy, and how no one can really succeed in such a harsh environment. The book's written over a very short space of time, which reflects the poem from which the actual title comes from, because Steinbeck's actually based this on a poem called To a Mouse, where basically when he was working in the field one day, he struck through a mouse's house and destroyed it, and obviously the mouse was then going to die in winter, and he felt bad about it. He wrote the poem, and then obviously Steinbeck's taken the idea and actually said that obviously people's lives are destroyed as well. So it's shed over a short space of time, so you actually see the spikes in people's lives, the changes, and just see how life can actually affect people very quickly. We've got loads of vivid descriptions, and this is really, really important. Obviously all the settings, all the places that we're actually in, you see some of the words and the adjectives used to describe them, and some of the unique metaphors and similes he uses. And there's almost like a haunting feel, like we're there, but sometimes we shouldn't be, because we know something bad is going to happen, and we come to that in a moment at Signpost and Ending. You've got a school of thought, which is basically like an idea of the idea of realism, where basically Steinbeck's trying to put us there almost in a cinematic technique. So it's like a camera, he kind of sets us up, and then he zooms into the action, and then we're kind of there living with the characters. So basically we start and then we go in. It's not like an omniscient narrator who's quite distant from everything, knows everything, and then we feel comfortable and safe with him. Here we're actually in with the characters the whole time, so it kind of gives us more of a insight into their failings, or it should give us an insight into their personalities, but obviously in this case it gives us an insight into their failings. Obviously there's symbolism all the way through, which we'll talk about in a second, and there's contrast, lots to be picked up with light and dark, and obviously silence and sound. Obviously the way that Curly's wife comes into the barn at the end comes to mind, etc. Now you've got this signposted ending. You know something bad's coming, whether you like it or not. Should it be? Obviously that's a question. Some people actually criticise it for being too obvious. There's so much actually building. So for example, we've got the deaths and Lenny's increasing violence throughout. So we know something's going to come through Lenny, because he kills a mouse, and then he breaks someone's hand. He breaks Curly's hand. Then he kills a dog, and obviously all this is building to show that Lenny's not going to be the safest person to be around. And obviously we've got the death of the dog, Candy's dog, in there, and obviously the mention of the gun a couple of times, so we know that danger's around the corner. And also with the symbols then, what you can actually analyse, you look for light. Anywhere it says light, then he was showing the contrast between good and bad, or he's showing that hopelessness is coming, this is foreshadowing something, etc. And then the idea of foreshadowing is actually another word you can use for signposting the ending there. It's just kind of telling us what's coming later. We've also got all the references to the animals, and obviously the animals to people, both in Candy's dog and Candy's dog and Lenny. And also you've obviously got the deaths, showing that death will actually come later. And then you've got colours, so most obviously you've got the red of Curly's wife's clothing, etc., which kind of denotes that she's not going to be a safe person to be around.